Tableau 4, in which some implications of the Industrial Revolution are considered. The Victorian industrialist wore a uniform. He could be recognized by his dark frock coat, his tall black stovepipe hat, his highly starched linen, his elaborate whiskers, and his flamboyant waistcoat jewelry. The industrialists of the second wave of the Industrial Revolution were free thinkers on matters of religion and were antipathetic to those who used Christianity to bolster the status quo. Since they had gained their wealth and status through their own efforts, they had small sympathy with inherited aristocratic privilege. Whilst it is true they still initiated and supported radical ideas in mechanical invention and scientific advance, they increasingly settled into positions of decreasing radicalism in politics. They wholeheartedly supported laissez-faire capitalism and expected it to yield unlimited progress as industrialization was extended throughout the economy. Having gained wealth, they expected to hang on to it. They had no time for the kind of radicalism that might now be called socialism. It is often said that by 1851, Britain produced half the iron in the world to build the railways and the ships to dominate the other half. It is true that by 1870, the United Kingdom's foreign trading income was 4 times as large as the United States, and more than that of France, Germany, and Italy put together. Soon the sun would never set on the British Empire. Large contingents of cheap labor would always be working somewhere on the earth for the greater good of the British industrialists. By the time of the opening of the Great Exhibition of 1851, that triumphant piece of advertisement of Britain's industrial prowess, the Industrial Revolution had completely conformed with the buoyant superiority of Victorianism. Few were prepared to resist the propaganda of its glory. Darwin's wife wept with joy at the prospect of Queen and country standing together under Paxton's glass conservatory roof in Hyde Park, singing the national anthem. The Times declared that it was the first time since the creation of the world that representatives of all its peoples have assembled and done a common act. Tennyson wrote that he had dipped into the future and seen that the heavens were filled with commerce in the parliament of men. When he came to publish his theories, Darwin's doctrine of the survival of the fittest could be effortlessly transformed in these men's minds to mean the survival of the best. And these industrialists, basked in their cathedrals of industry, considered themselves to be the best. Tableau 5, in which the effects of a new social order are considered. Industrial capitalism worked its way through the whole social structure of mid-19th century England and began to make great changes, not least in the huge movement of people from the country to the town, in new erosions of family and community life, and in many interlinked systems of exploitation. But to quote just one statistic from Mayhew's London Labour in the London 4, published in 1851, the year of the Great Exhibition, it has been proved that 400 individuals in London procured a livelihood by trepanning females from 11 to 15 years of age for the purposes of prostitution. Protestant Christianity of all denominations, rapidly proliferating and fragmenting under the strain, struggled to keep a hold on the spiritual health of the nation with orphanages, workhouses, and charity institutions. But the developing sciences, both worthy and bogus, were overtaking them in the popular imagination. Physiognomy, that insisted that hereditary criminality was determined by the shape of an individual's skull, hydropathy, complex systems of water cure, which Darwin resorted to for easing his digestive problems, mesmerism, hypnotism, clairvoyance, cosmology, astrology, along with a grotesque proliferation of junk technology that came with the new discoveries of steam heat, magnetism, and electricity. Attention to disease produced quackery and excessive demographic investigation, but also more and more methodical observation. The sick, the old, the diseased, children, and certainly for the very first time the mad, played here in various archetypal ways by actors, came under a new, particular, and even obsessive scrutiny. Tableau 6, in which social justice is considered. Transportation to the colonies was served on those considered to have committed crimes serious enough to deserve more than a whipping, but not serious enough for a hanging. The sentences were generally handed out to the young and to first offenders to serve from 7 to 14 years. But the difficulties of making the long return and the poor prospects of a welcome back home meant all but a very few deportation sentences were for life. However, stories were not uncommon of men committing crimes to get transported, preferring to face the unknown hardships abroad than continuing to suffer the conditions at home. Until the 1820s, some 200 crimes, including blasphemy and heresy, carried the death penalty. A rationalization of the law in the 1830s halved the capital charges, but with a consequent huge rise in the prison population. In the whole of Queen Victoria's reign, there were some 15 million admissions to prison, into the machines for grinding rogues honest. Officially, human contact prisoner to prisoner was forbidden, and in many jails, eye contact was prevented by forcing the prisoners to wear masked caps reconstructed here by a costume department. Slavery was abolished in England in 1807, but it was still extensively practiced by much of Europe and certainly the Americas, where Darwin witnessed the brutality at first hand and thanked God that he would never have to visit a slave country again. Only Britain made serious attempts to seize slave ships, where the inhuman conditions may have worsened, if that was possible, due to the trade being persecuted. Dysentery, smallpox, seasickness, brutality, and mass suicide overboard resulted in heavy losses on each trip. It was said the downwind stink of a slave ship could be smelt a mile away.